In the endless expanses of the South African savanna, where golden grass sways in the hot wind, lived an old lion named Zuri. Once he was the mighty ruler of the pride, whose thick mane, the color of the setting sun and piercing gaze, made even the bravest predators tremble. For 12 years, he led his pride through droughts, floods, and battles for territory. His roar echoed across the plains, and his paw prints were a sign of strength and power. But time spares no one, not even King. Zuri had grown old. His once powerful body had weakened, and he had lost one of his front paws many years ago in a fierce battle with hyenas. Now he limped, leaning on his 3 remaining paws, and his mane, though it retained its noble silver hue, had faded. A young and strong lion named Kavesi challenged Missouri, and having won, expelled him from the pride. With his head held high but his heart heavy, the old king left his family. He could no longer protect them, but the fire of dignity burned in his soul. Zuri set off alone, wandering the sun-scorched plains, where every day was a challenge. The savanna was unforgiving. The heat dried up the land, and finding water was no easy task. Missouri, despite missing a paw, stubbornly searched for prey. His movements were slow, each step causing pain in his old bones. Hyenas, sensing his weakness, followed close behind, their cackling echoing in the night like a mocking laugh. Sometimes he noticed the shadows of leopards in the tall grass, waiting for the moment to pounce. But Missouri did not give up. His spirit remained unbroken, even if his body was failing him. One day, in the middle of the dry season, Missouri reached a small oasis where a stream flowed under a lone acacia tree. He hoped to rest in the shade, but 2 leopards were already waiting for him there. Their eyes sparkled with greed, and their claws nervously scratched the ground. The old lion, realizing that a fight was inevitable, gathered his remaining strength and let out a low roar. The leopards, sensing his determination, attacked. One of them clung to his wounded shoulder, where his paw had once been, and blood spurted onto the dry grass. Missouri, overcoming the pain, managed to drive off the attackers with a powerful blow from his remaining front paw. The leopards retreated, but the wound burned, and the old king's strength was leaving him. Exhausted, he collapsed under an acacia tree. The wound on his shoulder began to fester, and every step was torture. Missouri knew he would not last long without help. He fed only on small rodents he managed to catch, and drank water from rare puddles. His once majestic body now looked emaciated, and his silvery mane was matted with dust and blood. On that day, when the sun was particularly merciless, a farmer named Tabani was driving along a dusty road. He was returning home after a trip to the nearest village. Noticing a limping lion, he stopped his old pickup truck. Tabani got out of the car, and keeping a safe distance, looked at Missouri. The lion looked pitiful. His fur was covered in dried blood, and the place where his front paw should have been looked terrible. Tabani, a kind-hearted man, could not leave the animal to die. He took out his phone and contacted the local wild savanna reserve, describing the lion's condition. "Stay where you are, we're on our way," replied the voice on the other end of the line. But Tabani couldn't just wait. He opened the trunk and took out a piece of goat meat he had bought for his family. Carefully, step by step, he approached Missouri and placed the meat nearby. The lion barely lifted his head and sniffed. His eyes, full of fatigue, met Tabani's gaze. There was no aggression in them, only gratitude. Missouri slowly crawled toward the meat and began to eat, his weak jaws struggling to cope with the food. Tabani left another piece of meat and, realizing that it would soon be dark, got into his car and drove away, praying that help would arrive in time. An hour later, a reserve truck pulled up to the spot where Missouri was lying. 3 rangers got out, team leader Adisa and her colleagues Lundu and Nams. They immediately recognized the old lion as the legendary Missouri, whose fame as ruler of the savannah had resounded years ago. Now, only a shadow of the former king lay before them. Adisa, experienced and compassionate, approached the lion, speaking softly to him to calm him down. Missouri, as if understanding that these people wanted to help, did not growl or resist. His breathing was heavy, but a spark of trust flashed in his eyes. Lundy administered a sedative and vitamin injection to the lion to ease his pain and keep him strong. Nomsas prepared a stretcher, and together they carefully carried Missouri to the truck, laying him on a soft blanket. The road to the reserve center was bumpy, but the rangers drove slowly so as not to disturb the injured lion. Upon arrival, veterinarians examined Missouri. The wound on his shoulder, where his paw had been lost, was inflamed, but fortunately, the infection had not spread to other parts of his body. However, his age and exhaustion made him too weak to return to the wild. After lengthy discussions, the reserve's management decided to keep Missouri at the center. He was given a spacious enclosure with a canopy where he could shelter from the sun. For the first few days, the lion hardly moved, lying on soft bedding with his eyes closed. Reserve staff took turns watching over him, bringing him fresh water and meat. The wound on his shoulder was treated, and the inflammation gradually subsided. Missouri began to eat, albeit slowly, and his gaze became less sad. After a few weeks, Missouri began to show signs of recovery. He began to lift his head more often, watching the people who were caring for him. His silvery mane, cleaned of dirt, shone again in the sun. Visitors to the reserve, having learned about his story, came to see the old king. Children gazed at him with delight, and adults admired his resilience. Odessa often told guests about Missouri's past, emphasizing that he was a symbol of the strength and pride of the savannah. Lundy and gnomes became almost friends to Missouri. They brought him food and talked to him as if he could understand their words. Sometimes Missouri would let out a quiet growl, as if remembering his glory days. He was no longer afraid of people, and his presence in the reserve became an inspiration to everyone who heard his story. Thus, under the careful supervision of the reserve staff, Missouri found peace. He no longer struggled with hunger and predators, but spent his days in the shade, surrounded by care. The old lion, who had lost his paw but not his spirit, became a legend of the wild savannah. His story reminded everyone that even in the darkest times, willpower and kindness can bring hope and new life. Friends, thank you for taking the time to read this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us and learn more heartwarming stories like this one.